Hey Robbins. Alright, so in this video, still going over the 6 kingdoms of life, but we're talking about that part when we were still in school and we had listed our 6 kingdoms of life, or 6 types of life, and we had 4 up top: animals, plants, fungi, and protista, and then 2 at the bottom: Eubacteria and Archaeobacteria. And I told everybody to draw a very mysterious line across their worksheets. Boop. Just like that, right? We wanted to make sure that we were separating these 2 kingdoms with these 4 kingdoms. Why would I want to do that? Well, if you remember from our studies of the prokaryotic cell, Archaeobacteria and Eubacteria are both prokaryotic cells. So those cell diagrams that we had done with the pili, the capsule, the cell wall, it had its DNA all kind of squiggling around on the inside, and it had flagellum. Not all prokaryotic cells have flagellum, but that one did. That's what types of cells these 2 types of life are. So regardless of whether or not it's a Eubacteria or an Archaeobacteria, the types of cells that these living organisms are going to have are prokaryotic cells. If I were to simplify this down to one point that you really have to understand, is that their cells are much more simple than these types of live cells. So, for example, here I have a prokaryotic cell. So this would have been the Eubacteria or the Archaeobacteria. Those types of life here are going to have this type of cell. And that should look pretty familiar from the work that we were doing in class. But plants, animals, fungus, protists, they all have eukaryotic cells. So now, see, they even have a line across their paper right there, because they got to separate them from being totally different. So let's learn a little bit more about what makes a eukaryotic cell. You all should have this worksheet at home, along with a blank one. And it is a close-up diagram of the eukaryotic cell. And this one in particular is an animal cell. If you're looking at this and you have already realized that this type of cell is much more complicated, then you win. Yes, you're right. There are so many different parts to the cell than there were for the prokaryotic cell. There's cell membrane, lysosomes, rough ER, smooth ER, chromosomes, nucleus, vacuoles, cytoplasm, ribosomes, Golgi body, mitochondria. Some of those things might sound familiar. Some of them maybe not. So let's talk about what some of those things are. I'm going to prop this up so you can still see it while I talk about it. But then I'll also have my trusty paper. Alright. This is all backwards for me, so I might have to turn around so that you won't be able to see me, but I'll be able to point and read at it, because I'm not good at reading backwards. So hold on a second. It disappeared, but don't worry, I'm still teaching. Okay. So if we're looking at this, ribosomes, cell membrane, cytoplasm. Those are all words that should be pretty familiar to you, because the prokaryotes and eukaryotes all have those same things, and they do the same things. But something that's new is something called the mitochondrion, or the Golgi body, or vacuole, nucleus, lysosomes, rough ER, and smooth ER. Where do we start? Well, let's start with the nucleus. It should be pretty clear here in this cell that the nucleus is much more complicated than the prokaryotic cells nucleoid. This nucleus here is all packaged up, and it actually has 3 parts to it. So it has a membrane that protects the nucleus. It also has DNA on the inside. It has chromosomes on the inside that also gives the cell some more information on how to do things. So again, it sort of thinks, it makes decisions for the cell, but it does not think like how a human does, but thinks a little bit more kind of like how a computer does. It's programmed to do certain things. And then there, inside of this nucleus, the DNA right here is super tight and compact, and it also makes more ribosomes. Another thing about a eukaryotic cell is that it almost as though it has a digestive system, kind of like how humans do. And I don't want you to think of it only as a digestive system, because it doesn't do quite the same things that our digestive system might do. But if you think about it in that way, it might help you remember what some of these parts are. So let's start with the rough ER and smooth ER, which is also known as the endoplasmic reticulum. What's going to happen with these 2 parts of the cell is that it's basically taking proteins and fats from around the cell and whatever it's been eating, and it starts to send them along these trails and gather them together. And what it's going to do is it's going to gather that stuff together, and it's going to go through the little squiggly stuff, and eventually it's going to send it over to the Golgi body. The Golgi body is also known sometimes as the mailroom. What it's going to do is take those proteins and package them up. So you can kind of think of the proteins that they get from over here as these long strings, like a big plate of tangly noodles. And what the Golgi body is going to do is take them and kind of swirl them into the right shape, and then package them in a way that it's a little bit easier for them to use instead of having a little tangly glob. Golgi body then is going to send that stuff out to the rest of the cell to help feed the cell, or it might even send it outside of the cell's body to feed whatever living organism has these cells in its body. Another part of the cell is the mitochondrion right here. Now this thing is one of the most important parts of the eukaryotic cell. It is known as the powerhouse of the cell. It makes something called ATP. The most important thing to know about this special part of the eukaryotic cell is that it just gives this cell so much more energy than anything that little prokaryote can even dream of doing. A lysosome right here is also going to help in this sort of digestive process that's happening inside here. The lysosomes are going to break down any materials that the cell doesn't really need anymore and kind of figure out what to do with them. Maybe spit them out, or maybe even send them over to the vacuole. A vacuole sometimes holds things to use later. Sometimes it holds junk that it doesn't need. Sometimes it just has liquids inside there. But you can think of it sort of like as a little plastic baggie or a pocket inside the cell for carrying things that it may or may not need. I think that those are all the parts that are different in the eukaryotic cell.